Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel for more fascinating Reddit horror stories. Today we have some truly chilling and spine-tingling tales to share with you. But before we dive into these real-life horror stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers before the end of April, and your support would mean the world to us. Every subscription helps us bring you more terrifying and thrilling content. Now let's get into these disturbing Reddit stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The dogs howling outside my house keep scaring the kids. Now they're claiming the dogs are making faces at them. I am a single mother taking on the challenge of raising two children in the middle of nowhere. My youngest, Ruby, is 4, and my eldest, Jade, is 7. Sometimes I feel like our presence isn't enough to fill the two-story farmhouse we live in, surrounded by never-ending fields, pierced by a single road, our connection to the town nearby. I could never leave the property. The family business relies on the farm, and my job is to keep it alive and going. I did feel stung by fear from time to time when it came to managing business and my two kids, especially because I had no support from anyone, but time passed and I stopped feeling lonely or insecure. We had plenty of dogs around the house, some sort of precaution I subconsciously took for me and my girls. I felt like if anyone were to come near us, the dogs would keep us safe, since they'd be trained to bite, scratch, and scare away anyone but the three of us. Their barking was our alarm, but we usually had nothing to worry about apart from animals or friends passing. We'd just come home from a road trip to my mother's house, and were exhausted. Our car had broken down halfway through the woods, and we had to stop at a random couple's house to call for help. By the time we managed to get on the road again, over 6 hours had passed, and Ruby and Jade were irritated and tired beyond measure. I unlocked the door and they sprinted up the stairs. I remained behind them in the doorway, key in hand, taking in the creaking of the house and the humid air. It was 11 p.m., and darkness and coldness had suffocated the building and its hallways. And sometimes I felt uneasy, even if I'd practically grown up on that farm. Something rattled behind me, and I turned around facing the porch and my car, barely visible in the night. I remained waiting, my back straight, until I heard the first raindrops. Then I shut the door behind me and locked it. That night, the rain fell and fell on our rooftop. The wind shook our home to the bone, and the walls trembled under the storm. Our dogs howled. Their barking was so unnatural, almost fearful, tearing down through their throats, hoarse and desperate. They'd never howled like that. Ruby and Jade slept in my bed that night. The storm hadn't done too much damage, and yet it left a looming presence over us, almost as if we were waiting for another one to finish the job. The next night, as I was tucking Ruby into bed, the silence of the house was pierced by a long howl. We froze, then barking followed, sustained only by one dog. "Is someone outside?" Ruby muttered, stretching. "Some cat or what?" "Yeah, probably. It'll shut up soon," I replied, annoyed. I threw a glimpse out the window and saw nothing. I went to bed, but the howling continued. I hated those occurrences when one of our dogs decided on a random night to just go nuts at whatever the hell he fixated on. "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" I tossed and turned, but the goddamn dog would not stop. Finally, I went downstairs and through the back door, and there he was. One of our dogs, Samson, barking like a lunatic at nothing. "Sams, honey, what are you doing?" I mumbled, searching for anything in the night. "Who's there?" Samson stopped barking the minute I opened the door and just stared at me. I thought I couldn't stand his howls, but now the silence triggered me in a different, unexpected way. He was a tall, lean dog of no particular breed, with dark eyes sizzling like pieces of charcoal. His quietness surprised me, and I stared into his eyes for a few moments but sensed no fear. I looked up to the distance, the vastness of the fields, so far away that the kitchen light couldn't reach. The silence was heavy, and Samson was as still as stone, looking straight at me. I suddenly felt very little, and just wanted to get to my girls, so I stepped back to shut the door. The moment I swung it, Samson leaped towards the entrance of the kitchen, but I'd been faster. I shut it and locked it, hearing his body slam against the other side. Then he let out a long, hoarse howl. It sounded vulnerable. Human. I sat there, trembling in disbelief, took a sharp breath, bit my lip, then shook my head and went upstairs, up to the last floor, to my girls' bedroom and slept on their floor. I couldn't show them I was afraid of our dog, who was supposed to protect us. Days passed after that incident, and I almost forgot about it. Even though I found myself to stare a bit longer at Samson, he didn't follow up with anything peculiar after that night. I dismissed the whole thing and focused on other problems since I had plenty to pick from. I think 2 weeks had passed after that when a cold, slippery hand woke me up in the middle of the night. I opened my eyes to greet Jade on her tiptoes, looking down at me, unsure of what to say. Why was she still on her tiptoes and whispering? She'd already woken me up, and Ruby was right behind her. "Oh, Mom, the dogs are howling again." This time, it wasn't just Samson. The howls formed a hoarse, crying mess that bounced off our walls and echoed into the darkness. And it wasn't just annoying, the way you'd throw a shoe at a dog, barking at the moon, but plain disturbing. They were desperate, eating into the silence, hungry for screaming, for crying, for mourning. I stood up and rushed to the window. Something had to be around our house, passing, or maybe a burglar had studied our farm for the past weeks and was slowly making his way in. Our home was big, and dark thoughts began racing into my mind. Thoughts of shadowy figures looking for my girls, my money, my home. "They've been howling for days, Mommy," Jade mumbled. "You can't hear them because you're sleeping all the time. But they're there and they won't stop. It's scary. I can't sleep." I hushed them and told them to sit still in my bed as I closed the bedroom door and tiptoed to the ground floor. Our dining room had two large sliding glass doors, and at night it felt like our whole wall was missing and you could see straight into the cornfields. It was moments like these where I was fully aware of how small we were and how isolated. Around us, acres of land spilled and spilled into the woods, blending into the pitch black sky, and a never-ending darkness surrounded my home. What could I even do? Even if someone was trying to break into my house, could I just call the police and tell them that the dogs are barking without even identifying an intruder? As I approached the doors, my head spinning, I made out the silhouettes of 3 out of 8 of my dogs. Among them was Samson, and they were barking like crazy. I slid one of the doors open, and just like the other night, they stopped barking and just stared at me. I stared back like a fool, not knowing how to react. Other dogs were still howling around the house, but Samson, Penny, and Jack were still looking at me calmly, their eyes too human, too tamed, almost as if they knew something I didn't. Before I could close the door, Samson let out a low, hoarse growl and stepped back. Then all 3 of them left. I heard their howls from the left side of the dining room, and I sat and listened for a few seconds, shivering in the cold night and holding onto the glass door like holding onto a lifeline. I was hoping I'd hear something else, like footsteps or a voice, something human that would justify my animals acting so strange. I closed the door and locked it, my eyes half closed from the tiredness and my throat dry. I had no idea what to do, and I felt the pressure of my actions as a mother, aware of them affecting my children's lives too. As I got to the second floor, I noticed my girls had shut all the doors and found them sitting still in my bed, wide-eyed. "Are you okay? The dogs are just going crazy at these cats outside." "I'm sorry, I know how scary it can feel. But it's all right, I promise. Do you want to watch some TV?" They didn't answer, but stared at me. I took it as a yes, and we eventually fell asleep hurtled together. The next night I was awoken again, this time by Ruby. Her tiny silhouette was shivering from the cold, and her eyes were bloodshot. "Ruby, are you crying?" "Mommy, we looked out the window." "What did you see, honey? Were the dogs being bad again?" "The dogs were making faces at us." A long pause followed, where I shifted my gaze from Ruby to Jade, raising my eyebrows. I understood the howling scared them, but I didn't know it had slipped into their dreams, too. "Did you have a bad dream, Ruby?" "No, Mom," Jade replied. "We heard the barking, and I looked outside for the cats, and Sammy and Max were out there, and they raised their head and looked straight at us." "Yeah, and their eyes were really wide, and they were laughing at us." What I managed to understand from their overlapping descriptions sent a shiver down my spine, and my neck tensed up all of a sudden as my throat began to dry up. Jade had said the dogs had raised their heads up to look at their window, and their eyes were really wide. Their teeth were bared as if they were smiling, and they looked, as Jade said, like funny masks. Ruby, on the other hand, chose to mimic the face they'd made. She grinned at me, then raised her eyebrows as high as they could, then let her head fall back, lifting her face toward the ceiling. I didn't want them to see me like that, Mom. To look at me like that. I didn't want to alarm them more than I already had, so I told them that it might have been the moonlight hitting weird and that I would check it out. I followed them to their room and looked out the window but saw nothing. The ground was bare and nothing moved outside, not even the wind. I barely managed to get them to sleep again. The next day, Samson and Max had gone missing. I went around our yard trying to find them, but to no avail. It was as if they'd never existed, and I never saw them again. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I was going to pull an all-nighter and look out for anything dangerous or weird that would occur outside. My girl's bedroom was facing the fields, while mine, the road. So that night I waited for them to fall asleep, then tiptoed inside and sat still at the window, waiting. I was sitting on my phone, one headphone in my ear, so as not to wake the girls. After midnight, my neck and legs went numb, and after 1 a.m., I began to blink mechanically and yawn every other minute. I was about to give up when I heard a teasing, low howl right under that window. I looked down, and what I saw jolted me awake. Jack was looking straight up to me. His blue eyes were bloodshot, but I could still see the whites glistening in the moonlight, and he smiled. His smile looked grotesque, a mockery of our human smile, a grin bearing all teeth, and the skin of his face was stretched to make room for all those teeth, white and sharp teeth. That, and he looked taller, almost as if he was standing on his hind legs, looking up at me and grinning. Panic filled my bloodstream as I couldn't help but sit there, frozen, staring at that awful image that is now engraved onto my brain forever. After what seemed like centuries, I turned to Ruby and Jade, and to my phone, hoping he'd go away. I knew there was no way he could get into the house, and I knew that the next day I would call the police. When I looked back outside, he'd disappeared. The next day, he'd vanished off completely. I'd been left with 5 of my 8 dogs, and I was beginning to fear that the 3 missing had never truly gone away. I feared they were nearby, waiting. I didn't know what they waited for, and I didn't want to give the weird shit that was going around my farm the chance to hurt us. I called the police. When they came, they looked everywhere. My house, my barn, the stables, the basement, the attic. They had found nothing and were now looking at me compassionately, as if I was some crazy lady who got spooked by living alone. I had nowhere to go, and I couldn't leave the farm, so I stayed. Last night, I was downstairs playing with Ruby, while Jade was watching TV. Ruby asked for a glass of water, and I went to the kitchen to get one for her. When I came back, I told them that night they had to go to sleep earlier. They complained, but I managed to get them upstairs. "Mommy, why are you sleeping with us here? There's no room." "I'm just cold. Come on, we'll fit into the bed." As I lay with them, my mind raced through the events of the night. How I'd double-checked the locks on all doors and windows. How I'd texted my mother, telling her we'd leave first thing in the morning. How, when I'd gone to the kitchen to get some water, I'd seen Jack's face outside the window smiling at me. There's something evil lurking in Hoosier National Forest. I've been more than a little hesitant to post this, but after what just happened on my last hike, I feel like there's no other choice. The parks may suffer for it, but people have to know. There's something evil in Hoosier National Forest. Possibly more than one. I've had similar encounters in multiple parks within HNF. Enough to make me question if one thing could be responsible for all of them. I've been followed on trails before. I've heard voices out in the woods that couldn't possibly be real. People who are too far away to be there. People who are dead. I once heard my granny's voice coming from a cave in Hemlock Cliffs. On my last hike, I went to Mogan Ridge, hiked the East Trail. It was scenic and beautiful. A nice day, if a little humid, not too sunny, not too windy. The hike was going wonderfully, until I realized that something was following me. I've seen and heard a lot of weird things in the woods, but this blows them all out of the water. Or woods, rather. Nothing I've seen or heard has ever come close to being this. I was about 3 miles out when I started putting together the weird sounds, crunching noises like someone chewing on ice mixed with joints rolling, coupled with a slithering sound, like something heavy being dragged through the leaf litter. I was out there with a friend because hiking alone is stupid and dangerous, I noticed the sounds first. I stopped walking to listen for a second. I think I said something like, "Hey, John, do you hear that?" When my friend stopped to listen too, the slithering stopped. The crunching kept going, though. It was a really nasty sound, the kind you can feel in your neck that makes your spine want to twist up, like somebody chomping down on something hard, like that sound when you roll your neck or crack your knuckles, the kind of sound you can feel in the fillings of your teeth. It was unsettling enough that neither of us wanted to stick around and find out what was making the noises. Neither John or I are fearful people, but something about those crunching noises sounded wrong, out of place and threatening. We started walking again, and the slithering started up again. At first, we thought maybe it was my walking stick making the dragging noise. But when I held it up away from the ground, the slithering didn't stop. John suggested weakly that maybe we were dragging our feet, and that was what was making the noise, but we both knew that wasn't it. The trail was too steep and too rocky to drag your feet on. Our next guess was a snake, but snakes in Indiana don't get big enough to make dragging sounds like whatever was making that creepy slithering sound. That was about when we started to hear the heavy breathing, like somebody behind us was panning down our necks. Once that started up, we really began shitting ourselves with fear. Because black bears have been sighted recently in Harrison County, a stone's throw from Perry County where Mogan Ridge is. We were certain that any second a bear was going to jump out of a stand of trees and eat us both alive until the whispering started. At that moment, we knew it was not a bear. Bears do not whisper. Nothing in the woods whispers. Not even mockingbirds. That just made it so much worse, because whatever was breathing down our necks, whatever was crunching and slithering behind us, it was speaking, and it knew our names. John, John, Ash, Ash, John, John, John. Ash, Ash, Ash. Look at me, John, look at me. Ash, look at me. Turn around, turn around, turn around. Look at me. And all the while it whispered, the chomping sounds continued. I began to fear that those sounds were chewing on the bones of the last hiker to come through here. I braved a glance over at John, and John braved a glance over at me, and there were tears running down his face like the Ohio River was flowing out of his eyeballs. I can only assume the same look of terror and despair was etched into my own face. I wanted nothing more than to run away. Run all the way to the end of the trail and get in the car and never, ever come back here. To never go within 10 feet of another tree ever again. But the hill we were climbing was too steep to run up. I could only walk slowly up the hill, this thing behind me all the while, whispering to me, saying my name. I don't know how long it went on. Hours, maybe? It felt like days. We ran whenever we could. Wherever the ground was flat enough, we ran. But no matter how fast we went, we could never seem to outrun it. It was always right behind us, whispering in our ears. Ash, Ash, Ash. Such a waste of talent, such a waste of potential. Will your parents miss you when I've stripped the skin from your flesh? Will they notice you're gone when I've sucked the marrow from your bones? I thought the nightmare would never end. I thought I'd die on that trail. My bones picked clean and scattered among the rocks. No one would ever know where I'd gone, that I'd dragged my friend to death alongside me. I've never run so fast as I did. When I realized the trail had begun to loop back around to the trailhead, that I was almost to the car, only a quarter mile more to go. I don't remember falling. I only remember something grabbing my ankle and pulling me down, dragging me backwards. The sound of my own screams ringing in my ears. John screaming. John pulling on my arm, dragging me out of the creature's grip. Crawling up the last hill on my hands and knees, rocks slicing into my skin. Screaming. And then light. The parking lot. John pulling me back to my feet, running to the car. As we pulled out of the parking lot, tires screeching, I looked back and I saw it. Tall, corpse-pale, skeletal, skin stretched taut over bones. Hunched over on all fours, limbs inhumanly long with too many joints. No eyes, only gaping holes in its face. A grin of blackened razors as it watches us pull away. Lifting one skeletal arm up to wave at us, a single human arm clutched in its grip, torn off at the shoulder.